And then we're thrilled to have Marcy Morgan from Harvard University, who can come to the stage now, please.
And finally, to round out a pretty extraordinary panel of voices, you really can't talk about women of color in hip hop without Angie Martinez.
Can you all hear me? Is this on?
Hi. It's so good to see you. You look amazing.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Skinner.
You did?
Welcome back, everyone, from lunch and what I hope to have been dynamic conversations. I know we had one in the group about youth political leadership. And so my name is Charlene Carruthers, and I serve as the National Director of the Black Youth Project 100. We're a national organization. We're a national organization of what I think to be some of the world's dopest black organizers and leaders. Right? We got a lot, and I'm privileged to work with some of them every single day. And so when I was first invited to moderate a panel with these women, I was like, wait a minute. What? This is amazing. And so we're right after lunch, so I hope at minimum we have a dynamic conversation that is engaging. And so without delay, I would like to introduce our panelists today. And so to my immediate left, I have Beverly Bond, who is the founder and executive director of Black Girls Rock, which is a youth, yes. And then we have Angie Martinez, who, we all know who Angie Martinez is. Angie Martinez is the host of the Angie Martinez Show on New York's Power 105.1. How y'all say it? Y'all say it like that? Okay. And she's a passionate cultural voice for her community and fan base through healthylatinating.com. Right? All right, clap it up. And then we have MC Lyte, hip-hop legend. Founder of Hip Hop Sisters. I don't know what else to say about MC Lyte, but you are without precedent, so thank you. Thank you. And then we have Marcelena Morgan, who is a professor in the Department of African and African American Studies at Harvard University, and is also the executive director of the Hip Hop Archive. And last but not least at all, is Dr. Janetta B. Cole. And she is the director of the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art and the former president of the Spelman College and Spelman College. Sorry, are there any Spelmanites here? I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are. And Bennett College for Women. Are there any Bennett Bills in here? All right.
President. You got to be a little louder by yourself. You gotta but that is the current president of Bennett College.
Yes. Awesome. So I love hip hop, you know, and in like a relationship, there are ups and downs, tensions, all kinds of things, you know. And so the way this panel is going to run, we have a series of questions, and then we'll open it up for audience questions. And so the first question is that now we can look back at hip hop history, and there are at least three generations of this work, right? Going from the 70s to the 80s and the 90s. It goes from gangster rap, we think about NWA, to Will Smith's work, right? To today's hip hop, you know, be it Fetty Wap or who else is good? Young Thug. I can list them all day.
Drake,
yes, right? So things that sound different and look different. But Kendrick Lamar, we gonna be all right. So recognizing that there's not a single hard and fast divide, how do you think these generations have represented women? These different generations of hip hop, how have they represented women? And we can start with you, Beverly.
Well, I think it has gotten progressively worse. I remember a time, because I'm older than you, by a couple of years. But I remember a time when hip hop wasn't as misogynistic. I remember having women's voices like Light, like Latifah, like Yo-Yo, like Moni Love, Kim, Foxy, Rage, you know. In addition, all of the messages from our brothers were not objectifying us only. You know, we were Benita Applebaum, we were Around the Way Girls, you know. There were songs like Brown Skin Lady and, you know, Poor Righteous Teacher Shaquilla. There are just so many other messages to women. And so to see us narrowed into this very small box of what is defined as beauty, outer beauty, which is usually light, bleached light now, which is usually a body type that is actually more like body dysmorphia. A lot of girls are actually buying into it, and surgery is a part of young girls, young girls who don't need surgery for anything. They're opting for these kinds of like unrealistic features based on, not just because of music, obviously, but I'm saying that the messages in our music definitely has a lot, it puts women kind of in this space of being the object, and you can be replaced, you know. So for me, I see it as progressively worse. Although I do think that there is hope, I do think that there are great possibilities, but I think that I have seen a decline.
Thank you, Angie.
I think the big difference from then to now, though, I think there were terrible messages then. I mean, you named some amazing songs, but I could name 17 that were awful, right? Yeah, it was a balance. It was more of a balance, I definitely think. But I think one of the reasons why, too, is that we have less women voices in hip-hop today, than we did then. And I don't know why that is. I've had this conversation with many people, and maybe we can even discuss it at some point today, but I don't know why there are less women or female rappers than there were back then. I think you have an answer for that? Yes? Please, because I've had many conversations and can't
Angie, I mean, honestly, I think it's by design. I think it is by design. I think it's easier to sell a product than it is to sell an artist. And so I think that women's voices, I think great artist voices have gotten diminished.
By design by who? The labels?
I don't want to be the conspirator. I don't want to say the man, especially I'm sitting here in the White House. But I do think that it is easier for corporations to sell a cookie cutter product than it is for them to sell
we can't hear you, Beverly. We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
I think it's easier for corporations to sell a cookie cutter product than it is for them to invest in artist development. I think a lot of our artists have kind of lost their ability to have their voices heard in this industry. And I've seen a lot of stuff which is quite frankly, and I know we all work, I know you guys know I started Black Girls Rock, but I'm also a hip hop DJ, and that's where I started this. I started Black Girls Rock because of that. I started Black Girls Rock because I started to see this decline in women's voices, not just from the videos, but also on the other side, on the music side, on the business side. And so I think that the constant decline of women in this industry is definitely, it's easier for people to make money without having to worry about a pushback, without having to worry about an artist who has their own mind. It costs more to develop that artist. And even as a producer in TV, I know that it takes a lot more to push back to get your creative voice heard.
I have been in, this is an awful thing. I was just talking to Thea from My Heart outside about this. I have been in a room and heard a very high level executive at a record company say that he doesn't sign female rappers because they cost more money. Because they, there's hair, there's makeup, there's glam, there's, so for them it's cheaper to push out a male rap. This was a few years ago, so I think it is partially that, but also I gotta be honest. I feel that, when I started, 20 years ago on the radio, I feel like I would meet so many young women that said, I want to be a female rapper, or listen to my rhymes, or I write rhymes. Or I feel like I met so many more women then than now.
Yeah.
I mean, a handful here and there, but it's not the same. I don't still feel that drive from women to want to do that. I don't know what the answer to that
I'd
is.
love to hear from an MC.
Yeah.
What was the question again?
So the question, right?
We got off on a little.
So what we want to. This is an intergenerational panel, right? And so we want to be able to at least start to talk about how hip hop has evolved or changed, in particularly its representation of women over the generations.
There's many ways that I look at this. On one hand, I do agree with Angie, with the executive, because I know it costs a lot of money because I was the one spending it. So if you're going to an award show as a female artist, you need clothing, you need hair, you need makeup. There are lots of things to need that's to the tune of about $5,000 to $10,000 each time, including your airfare, your hotel, your car. It becomes really expensive. But I think to your point, Bev, it's a business. We take hip-hop as a cultural expression of upliftment, advancement, expansion. However, they do not. It is a business for them. And so they are looking to sell records and spend the least amount of money that they can, because that would turn their profit big. And so for us, it means we've lost one of the most vital voices in hip-hop, and that is that of a woman. I don't think the picture is complete at all, or the narrative is wholly told without the voice of a woman. But I do remember being somewhere at a panel, I believe it was with Chuck D, and he said that what the system that Bev doesn't want to talk about, has done is really remove the head from hip hop. And I think we put so much heart into what it is that we do. And that's not to say that the guys don't, but it comes from a space of nurturing. It comes from a space of wanting people to be better. There are a slew of female MCs out there waiting for their opportunity to be seen, to be heard, to spread their message. And it is one of love. The ones that we're seeing may not get a chance to express that. They may embody it, but we only see one side of it, and that's the side that the system shows. It's the side that is easy to sell because they do want to go the route where they don't have to try as hard. And now with the whole new set, and this goes deep into record labels and A&R folks, and how they're not really A&R folks. They just were, pushed into a position of somewhat power, but they're all looking for the same thing. So that's why when we're hearing music today, you're not sure who it is that you're listening to. However, young ones might be able to tell you, oh, that's that person and that person, because they have an ear. But we come from a space where everyone sounded different and looked different and had different personalities, and we all talked to Kim, Foxy, myself, all from Brooklyn, but we all are very different from one another, and we speak to a different woman, we speak for a different woman, and I think that's what we're missing, is the variety that used to exist within hip-hop and what we represented on the front of a community. Each person in a community could say, oh, that's the one that represents me best, or that's the one that I want to be like. But now it's sort of this one thing. Yeah. I hope I answered that.
No, that's great. I see Elena and Dr. Cole, you all work in different environments, a part of different institutions. And so I'm really interested in your perspective, either what you've seen over the years from young women, from the student perspective, or what you've seen in academia, and even how people think about hip hop and women.
Well, from what I've seen, I've started researching hip-hop in the mid-'90s, and was probably a fan before that, because I always tell people I would never have finished graduate school if it weren't for hip-hop, because it gave me a way to think about the battle with my committee, but that's another story. But so I come into hip hop, by training I'm a linguistic anthropologist. I come into hip hop really hearing it. You know, I'm hearing it and I am thinking, wow, I wonder if they're really from Georgia. I wonder if they're really, because I'm doing dialects, I'm doing all that, and then the signify, and all this, and like, they probably don't know that they didn't make up that word. That word started here and then moved there, and I started tracking, so it was like fun. I enjoyed it. I really appreciated it, and as it began to grow and you started hearing more and more styles, it became more and more of an interest of mine. But I came to hip hop as a researcher because of women, okay? And just very quickly, it's me doing a study in Mississippi. I was already at UCLA. I'm in Mississippi looking at how women talk about the civil rights movement, but I'm really looking at the difference in discourse between Chicago and Mississippi and this line of people who are related. And I get a group of women together and they sit down, and they're all dressed really nicely, and they say, we've decided that we're not going to talk to you unless you talk to our kids about hip hop. And I looked, this is Jackson, Mississippi, and I said, how do you know about hip hop? They actually said hippity hop, okay. Oh, but I said, so it, to make it was very interesting. So all their kids began to, so they held the camera, they did the taping, and we talked about hip hop. So their whole thing was, I'm connected to my kids. So when I look at hip hop, I've never looked at it as the only people who hear are the teenager or whatever. It's an entire community. And I always heard what the artist heard in their childhood when they played it as a sample, So I was very much aware of kids grow up in communities, they grow up in families, they have favorite this. And if you interview someone about how they learned something, it usually, especially if they came from a house where that kind of music wasn't allowed, it's those cousins. Cousins are always playing.
Always.
You gotta listen to this, don't let. So I'm saying all that to say that times have changed and hip hop has changed. And I think that it's really productive if we also talk about these are different times. And so in terms of how one can become an artist now without using these really corrupt labels, okay, who are, of course, are only going for profit. That's it. So really thinking about those things and where we are, because if you think about this panel and the discussion, more young women know more about the issues associated with violence, sexism, sexually transmitted diseases, etc., because women hip-hop artists have talked about it, especially you. If you think about when you did Eyes on the Soul, I was working in community centers at that time. Oh yeah, that's all you got. You know what I mean? It was just like so important, those moments, and so hip-hop has really, and it does continue to do that. But the lens is very different, but absolutely.
Thank you. Dr. Cole?
Well, first I want to say it's really a joy and a privilege to be on this panel with you sisters. And I think what's so important is that we probably do represent a range of views and experiences. Mine will clearly not be those of younger women. So let me say where my perspective comes from. It comes from being a Black woman, feminist, who has struggled mightily with homophobia, who cares deeply about Black people and by all folk. And because I begin there, it is hard for me to deal with just a little bit of misogyny You know? It's just hard. It's like, you know, but some hip-hop artists don't say as much foul stuff as others. I don't want any of it to degrade black women. To say that the absence of more voices of women is shameful, I cannot help but agree. But I'm going to be as candid as I've been in the comments you just had to put up with. To say, unfortunately, we can be the perpetrators of our own oppression. And so we've got to be honest about who is delivering these messages. And I want any of them that degrade women to cease.
So that's a great lead into my next question. It's a great lead. Because about 2 weeks ago, I was in a hallway at a police department with 14 other young black women after 66 people had taken arrest in a mass civil disobedience at the International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference. Yeah, 66 people. Most of them were women, trans folks, gender nonconforming folks of that 66. And so Samantha Master is in this room, and she's the one who kicked off the conversation. She was in the jail with us. She said, well, you know, who do y'all think is the most feminist hip-hop artist of today? Somebody said, I'll just say somebody. Okay, I didn't want to put you on blast that much. And Samantha said Fetty Wap is the most feminist of the current hip-hop. And had a reason, had rationale as to why, and we had a whole conversation about this. And the reason why I brought this up is because we were in a movement space, right? Like, had just taken a rest, thinking about how this fits into our overall, black liberation organizing. And we're talking about feminism and hip-hop at the police station. And so, can you even be a hip-hop feminist? Is that such a thing? If so,
I think you can, and I agree. At this point in time, it probably is Fetty Wap.
And why?
Based on what, though? I need to hear this full. You can't just say that.
What I mean is that he may have a very unique way of presenting his ideas, but he does love women. And you don't agree?
No, I do.
Oh, you agree? Okay.
I think.
Yeah, and for what he's up against in this climate with all of the other MCs, he's taking a stand. He's being pretty courageous right now with what it is that he presents in his music, because it's really not the norm. When I was trying to write down a few people that may have said something. Now there's, of course, Kendrick, right? And then there's Big Sean. He raps about his grandma. Any man that raps about his grandma, you got to show some love to. And then, of course, there's Common and Talib. But to be new, these are guys who have had some years to be in it. J. Cole. J. Cole, yes, I love him. Sometimes he could say a little something out the box, which makes me, don't do that. You're on a good roll. But
isn't that the nature of hip hop? It's that it's just it's supposed to be provocative and challenging, and it's supposed to be all the things that J. Cole. What was it?
Well, I think you win the challenge when you're able to get your message across without degrading your sister.
I agree. I agree.
Or your woman, or your mother, or your, there's a woman in the lives of these men that have done right by them. And to persecute every woman publicly forever on the microphone. This is recorded vocals that will last through the test of time in the way that it's being done today is not fair. Now, what I will say is that we need to give a few of these good men a chance and hoping that they will develop to be something else in the future. I know that when I first started, I used a whole lot of profanity. I wasn't good at communicating, so I just used what I knew. And the more you understand that you're not just rocking for the block, that these words are going out across the entire globe, you at that point have to take responsibility and accountability. And I just think for Fetty Wap and some of these guys that I mentioned, that they really are on the forefront of what could be a great change in hip hop if we show them the love and let them know that they're heading in the right direction. They get a lot of pats on the back for, you know, the disruptive things that are said, but are we there to give them that extra push to let them know they're headed in the right direction by showing the African American woman love?
I'm just going to jump in, and I'm going to say that I do think, I do agree with you, Dr. Cole, that we do allow people off the hook, you know, in hip hop, and sometimes we can't, you know, sometimes our conditioning is conditioned. But I will agree that Kendrick Lamar is a game changer. I will agree that I think what he's doing and what he's saying is brave, and it's very black. It's very truthful, and it's very authentic, and I think that that's what we always look for in hip hop, for your truth and for your authenticity. And so sometimes when I see, I have a standard for art, and I expect it to be, your story doesn't have to be a positive story, but I look for authenticity. Regarding profanity, it's different, degrading people. I mean, the way I speak in public,
It's very different.
it's very different. You know, but I would say that we need to put our support behind the women who are trying to still come out and come up, like Rhapsody, like
Love Rhapsody.
like Little Mama. Little Mama is a perfect example of someone who is a victim of sexism in this industry. She made one little faux pas a long time ago, and she's still living, not just from, critics aren't just men, they're also women who are not putting any kind of support behind this really talented and great artist. You know, when she comes and speaks to our kids at Black Girls Rock, and when I tell you the kids love this girl, they are super fans of her. She's also very authentic with her art, and she's great. She's a great artist, but yet she cannot live down something very small. When I've seen, you know, more recently, you know, an artist put rape lyrics in a song, and he's already past that. So we got to look at the way in which we're, you know, trying to, and I respect having our brothers' backs, but we got to have our sisters' backs, because these girls are missing in hip hop, you know, and they need the space, and we need to hear them. Like you said, when half your voice is missing, men don't exist in the world without us. You know, so half of your voice is missing, and you are living proof, and Latifah and everybody else that we mentioned are living proof that women's voices matter in hip hop and sell. You know, so.
Let me pose this question. We know that hip hop, whichever phase, going back to the 70s and 80s to now, it doesn't just dangle in space, disconnected from the rest of society, disconnected even from the world. So in agreeing with my sisters that things have not improved in general, and we do need to lift up those who are going against the negativity. But if things have not improved, is that an acknowledgement that overall the circumstances in which Black folk, Latino folk, Native American folk, Asian American folk, poor white folk, that our conditions as people, and because we know of that extraordinary additional burden that comes to us, is that to say things are just getting worse?
Can we hear from you, Marcelina? Yeah, if you'd like to answer that.
Well, I think things are, in fact, getting better, okay? I think the issues are out there much more directly, and I think that's a good thing. I think that we get to really deal with very serious issues of whether it's representation, whether it's sexism, we're dealing with these publicly, when in the past it was all private. And it's been hard making it that it's become so public. But as we're dealing with it publicly, we're not just arguing about these issues and dealing with very hard issues among ourselves. Everyone in the world is dealing with our issues. It is everyone's issue. Mm-hmm. And we need to understand that. If you look at hip-hop feminism, women in hip-hop, one of the things that we understand is that what's happening throughout the world is not against women is not about hip-hop. Okay, there are very real problems, and a lot of them are represented in hip-hop. We get to talk about it, argue about it, deal with it in our women's studies class, African American studies, all of our classes, and talk about a video when what we're talking about is this messed up world that we're living in many ways. And that is what we forget to do, is to put it back where it belongs, on us, okay? Hip-hop, the more talented and authentic, or however we want to describe the person is, the more we get, okay? And the more we get to talk about these issues. Whether or not, even if in the session at lunch we talked about bullying, you think about the whole concept of bullying. Unfortunately, we need to figure out what that is, because in many cultures, what's called bullying is not bullying, in others it isn't. So sometimes talking to each other back and forth and signifying is considered bullying to some people. So what I was called teasing when I was a kid is called something else. The world is opened up. So we have to turn to someone and explain, no, there are two kinds of macaroni and cheese. It's just like, who didn't know that? Okay, so.
That was terrific.
But Thanksgiving is coming, and these things are in my head. But hip hop, and this is why I'm really a big. When I first started Hip Hop Archive at Harvard, everyone, artists, regular people, young people, professors would say, "Why would you have a hip hop archive at Harvard? Why is it at Harvard?" And I said, "Where do you think it should be? Tell me, where do you think it should be?" And they'd step back. I'm like, "Yeah,
Okay, so thank you. We have to wrap up soon, but we have a couple of minutes for questions. Yes, I have that right. Okay, and so we'll start here, and then we'll go to you. And can we just get a couple questions in a row, and then we'll bring it back to the panel? Yes.
Hello. Okay, this is Angel. I'm a grad student at the University of Maryland, and my question, I guess what I really want to know is, I see hip hop as, it has evolved and everything, but to me it's an issue of power, and it doesn't belong to us anymore. And that for me, that's part of it. And also just, I feel like for Black people particularly, our art was never just art. It was social activism, and we lost that. And so I just wanted to throw that out there about, what you think about it. And one more thing is just about Lauryn Hill, and that one thing that I was frustrated that people in my generation say is, well, whatever happened to Lauryn Hill? But for me, the issue is that didn't open up more doors for more artists like her, who were speaking to multiple things. And so you could just pick a answer, but a question. You don't have to answer all of them.
Danielle, I'm going to get a couple questions.
Hi, I'm Danielle Moody Mills. Side note, Angie Martinez, life-giving. I grew up listening to your voice, like, in the morning to get me ready for school. I'm so excited. Anyway, I have a question about the good girl versus the bad girl kind of conversation that's happening right now in hip hop. So Drake has a song that comes out, Hotline Bling. Everybody loves it. Everybody's singing it. And beside it being incredibly stalkery to me, and just incredibly problematic on so many other levels, he constantly, and him and many, many other men, constantly are talking about this good girl stays home and the bad girl is out in the streets. And it's really putting women into these boxes. And I'm thinking to myself, well, where are you meeting these girls? Because you're not meeting them at their house. Aren't you meeting them out? So my question is about like how, like, about this kind of, this stereotyping that's happening of women that is saying like who is good and what's considered good and what that looks like versus the bad.
Thank you. And let's get one more over here.
I will always think of the song as being stalkery now every time I hear it. Thank you.
Thank y'all for this wonderful panel. My name is Brittany Cooper. The question that I have is, like, do we only have to narrate the decline of women in hip hop by talking about women being MCs? Because I'm thinking about all of the other really dynamic things that women in hip hop do. Like, all of you are in hip hop in some form, or many of you on the panel are, or are part of the hip hop generation, and you're activists and you're professors and you're DJs and you run foundations, and we have folks starting television shows and we have folks dropping novels. So I'm wondering if we tell the narrative in a different way. I feel like you could probably see women in hip hop all kinds of places, and it doesn't just have to be about rap.
Okay, so yes.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna start with Brittany's question. I'm gonna try to be quick because I know we don't have time.
I think there was one more.
Sorry, just one more question. There's some really good news about women in hip hop that we're not talking about, and that's Latinas that are singing in Spanish in hip hop. There's La Mala, we have Ana Tijoux, there's Bomba Estéreo, who's going to be rapping with Will Smith next week at the Latin Grammys, and they're telling really activist messages, and this is like a really underground message that I think we can look to in a model, is looking at communities of color that don't get acknowledged and are really speaking a new truth. So I wanted to see what you guys thought about that.
Absolutely. We featured Anna on an event that we did. Start with what Brittany said. I agree with you that there are women in hip hop and other spaces, and when you ask the question is about can there be hip hop feminism, I think that MC Light, Angie, myself are who are fighting for women's voices and whose foundation is based in hip hop is absolutely proof of hip hop feminism. One of the things that I also think is that in the academic spaces, I know that there are a lot of a lot of universities now that have Ninth Wonder, and these are all my dudes, and I love them all. Ninth Wonder, Questlove, Jizza, a few other people. I'm not thinking off the top of my head, but they're all teaching at university level. They're teaching classes and courses on hip hop, and I think that more women need to be in those spaces as well. I think that, you know, I want to see MC Light have a class at Harvard teaching hip hop. Yes. You know what we do at Black Girls Rock right now. Like, Black Girls Rock has at least 3 different. They learn how to DJ the real way from records. They have a digging in the crates class because they have to understand and be critical thinkers about music and understand where their history came from. They have production classes called Girls Rock Tech where they're learning how to make beats. And then they have speakers come in and talk to them, everyone from DJ Spinner to the lead guitarist of Def Leppard to Pete Rock will come and speak to these kids, to MC Light, to Rhapsody, to Lil Mama will come and speak to our girls. So this is a class, is what I'm saying, is that we're doing the same work, but sometimes the work that we do doesn't get defined in hip hop. It's like, oh, Bev was a hip hop DJ, now she's doing that thing, you know what I mean? I'm a heavy hitter. I'm in one of the biggest, best DJ crews in the country, but it's not looked at as, you know, we built this platform within this hip hop space. It's kind of looked at like, okay, she does this. It looks like to Latifah, you know, she was an artist and now she does this other thing. But in actuality, that's hip hop feminism. And I think that the work that we've done and the empires that we build and are building do need to be respected as this great contribution to hip hop. because Black Girls Rock is a contribution to hip hop. Hip Hop Sisters is a contribution to hip hop.
I loved what you said about good girl, bad girl. Thank you. You know, I think this is like age-old argument about hip hop. You know, because ideally, like Beverly was saying before, like the best hip hop is the most authentic. It's the most honest. It's not always pretty. The best hip hop to me is always thought-provoking. You know, we were talking about J. Cole earlier, and you know he has a song called "No Role Models," and so he talks about, you know, don't save her, she doesn't want to be saved. He talks about shallow women, and he talks about missing a time of a different role model that he would see, the Nia Longs and the different. And I think, you know, one of the things that we haven't really spoken about at all on the panel is social media and the influence that plays, not only on our lives, but that it plays in hip hop. I feel like even, you know, songs like that are influenced by, and you hear a lot more lyrics in hip hop, and they talk about little social media. They talk about hashtags. They talk about what girls are doing on Instagram, what girls are doing on Twitter. So a lot of the negative messages I've been hearing as of late are like a reflection of some of the things we see on social media. And I guess we can argue, is that hip hop leading social media, or is that social media leading hip hop? And I'm not really sure what the answer is. I wish we would have maybe some more time to speak about that. But I think hip hop in its best form does talk about across the board some of the issues that we have. But I got to go back to the original thing, and you mentioned Lauryn Hill, and I'm so mad that we didn't talk about her more today, because she's somebody to me that, wow, if we could have 5 Lauryn Hills, you know what I mean? We could change the whole playing field. You know, but to me, I go back to the fact that I think it's the lack of the voices. I think we don't have the balance that we had, you know, in MC Lyte, or even not you know, even of Eve and Missy, and you know, Missy's on her way back. You know, we need to support Missy. You know, so I think we, like you, and to go back to what you said about supporting some of the younger artists, I think that's really important. The more that we can all kind of find those young women, help to support those young women, I think we'll have a more level playing field.
Thank you so much, Angie. I think that's a great way to wrap up our panel. I'm seeing folks walk towards the podium.
Wait, I just want to say one thing.
One thing?
Just
Okay.
about power. We haven't lost our power. And the moment we believe that we've lost it, then we lose it. But the power is for hip hop is fueled by the community. And the moment we think that a radio station or a magazine can dictate to us who we should love, that's when we're in trouble. We need to get behind the people that say the things we agree with, that teach us and inspire us, and think of it as a candidacy, and vote for them by purchasing their record or talking about them and lifting them high up, so that we can all learn about who they are. And thank you to that sister there telling us about the performance that's going to happen with Will.
Thank you.
God bless you all.
Thank you. I don't think so. I think she's going to cut us off. Thank you all so much. Thank you. I wish.
So let's give it up for the panel once again.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, absolutely.
So as we've been planning and thinking about this event, what we've been hoping for is exactly what just happened: a diversity of perspectives, real conversation, and talking about the real issues that we're trying to engage and surface. That's going to continue as we move into our next panel, which is going to extend our conversation about media, image, and representation. So what we'll do is begin to shift from this panel to the next. And I am thrilled to call back to the stage Melissa Harris Perry, who will moderate our next session. And she'll be joined today by Chirno Biko from the New York City Council Young Women's Initiative,